There's a room at the Salk Institute in California where mice learn to slow time. Not metaphorically, not psychologically, actually. The neuroscientists there discovered something in November 2024 that should have made headlines everywhere but didn't, because what they found was too simple to be revolutionary. Too obvious to be true. They mapped a circuit, a literal pathway of neurons that runs from the thinking brain down into the ancient brainstem, the part that keeps you breathing when you sleep, when you dream, when you forget you even have a body. And this circuit, it's a control panel, a dial you can turn. When you slow your breath consciously, deliberately, like you're pulling on invisible reins, this pathway lights up. The frontal cortex whispers to the medulla. The medulla listens, and suddenly anxiety dissolves. Not because you think it away, because you breathe it away. The lead scientist, Sung Han, said something strange in his interview. He said, "I want to design a yoga pill." Think about that. A pill that makes you breathe slowly. A pharmaceutical shortcut to meditation. A chemical hijacking of what should be the most voluntary, most human thing you do. Conscious breath. But here's what he didn't say. Here's what the study whispered between its data points. What if breath isn't just changing your brain chemistry? What if it's changing your reality itself? When you breathe fast, hyperventilating, panicking, sprinting, time speeds up. Events blur, details vanish. You're reactive, not reflective. The present moment collapses into a single point. Survive. But when you breathe slow, 6 breaths per minute, the rhythm yogis have known for millennia, something else happens. Time expands. You notice gaps between moments, space between thoughts. Reality stops being a rushing river and becomes layered, observable, as if each breath is a frame you can pause and study. And the science backs this up in ways that are almost too strange to be coincidence. Studies from 2024 show that conscious breathing doesn't just calm you, it synchronizes you. Brain waves align with heart rhythms. Heart rhythms align with respiratory cycles. And all of it, the electrical symphony of your nervous system, starts to pulse together like an orchestra finding the same tempo. They call it entrainment. I call it something else. Breath as a tuning fork for reality. Think about this. You've been breathing your entire life, every moment since birth. Right now, as you listen to these words, air is moving through you, oxygen diffusing into blood, carbon dioxide leaving, cells burning fuel, neurons firing. But how often do you notice it? How often do you realize that this invisible, automatic process is the only bodily function you can control both consciously and unconsciously? Your heart beats without you. Your liver filters without permission. But breath is the hinge, the place where voluntary will meet involuntary life. And maybe that's not an accident. Maybe breath is the interface, the place where consciousness touches matter, where mind edits body, where the ghost operates the machine. And if that's true, if breath really is the control panel, then what happens when you learn to use it differently? Let me tell you about a study from 2023 that changed everything. 20 people, healthy adults, no drugs, no technology, just breath. They did something called conscious connected breathing. Circular, rhythmic, no pauses between inhale and exhale, faster than normal but not frantic. Imagine breathing like a sine wave, continuous, flowing, for about an hour. Afterward, researchers scanned their brains. Delta waves, the slowest brain waves associated with deep sleep and unconsciousness, dropped. Theta waves, linked to drowsiness and dream states, fell too. But gamma waves, the fastest oscillations tied to insight, focus, and heightened awareness, surged. Here's what that means in plain language. These people altered their consciousness using nothing but air. No meditation app, no guru, no substance, just the deliberate manipulation of respiratory rhythm. And the subjective reports? People described it like a psychedelic experience. Visual distortions, euphoria, a sense of boundary dissolution, the feeling that their body was melting into space, that their mind was touching something larger than itself. They measured this with the Altered States of Consciousness questionnaire, the same tool used to study psilocybin and LSD. The results were comparable. Breath was doing what molecules do. But it gets stranger. Because while those brain changes were temporary, something deeper was shifting. Researchers studying long-term breathwork practitioners, people who've done this for years, found permanent changes in how their brains process interoception. Interoception, the sense of your inner body, heartbeat, gut feelings, the subtle hum of being alive. Most people are terrible at it. They can't feel their heartbeat without touching their chest. They mistake hunger for anxiety, fatigue for sadness. They live outside their bodies, detached, observing life through a cognitive fog. But breathwork practitioners? Their anterior insula, a brain region responsible for sensing the body, becomes hyperactive. They can feel their heartbeat, sense their blood pressure changing, detect subtle shifts in arousal before they become emotions. It's like they've turned up the volume on a signal that most of us can barely hear. And here's the kicker. The anterior insula isn't just about sensation. It's also where the brain constructs the self, the felt sense of I, the continuity of being someone. So when you change how you breathe, you're not just changing your state. You're changing the narrator, the voice that says, I am anxious, or I am calm, or I am here. Now, let's go deeper. Because there's a theory, still speculative, still controversial, but gaining traction, that consciousness isn't just electrical, it's quantum. In 2024, researchers at Wellesley College did an experiment with rats. They gave them anesthesia, the drug that erases consciousness, and found that it works by binding to microtubules inside neurons. Microtubules, tiny protein structures that give cells their shape. Most scientists think they're just scaffolding, structural support. But Roger Penrose, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and Stuart Hameroff proposed something radical in the 1990s. What if microtubules are quantum computers? What if consciousness arises not from neurons firing, but from quantum superpositions collapsing inside these molecular tubes? And for decades it was dismissed. The brain is too hot, too wet, too noisy for quantum effects, they said. Quantum coherence only survives in near absolute zero, in isolated labs, in conditions the brain could never maintain. But then, in 2024, researchers found something shocking. Microtubules can maintain quantum coherence at biological temperatures. Photons generated inside these tubes become entangled, a quantum phenomenon where two particles remain connected across space, where measuring one instantly affects the other, no matter the distance. And if that's happening in your brain, if your neurons are hosting entangled photons, then consciousness might not be local. It might be distributed, networked, connected to something larger. Here's where it gets mystical. If microtubules are quantum processors, and if breath modulates brain activity, then breath might be doing more than changing neurotransmitters. It might be changing the quantum state of your brain. Every inhale, a new configuration. Every exhale, a collapse of possibilities into one present moment. Breath, as the mechanism by which consciousness chooses reality. And there's indirect evidence for this. Studies on high ventilation breathwork, the intense, rapid breathing used in practices like holotropic breathwork, show that it drastically increases cerebral blood flow. Blood surges into regions like the posterior insula and anterior hippocampus, areas involved in sensing the body and processing memory. But it also does something else. It creates hypocapnia, a drop in carbon dioxide that makes blood more alkaline, which changes how neurons fire, how microtubules vibrate, how quantum coherence might stabilize or collapse. People report seeing things during these sessions: geometric patterns, visions of past events, encounters with entities or presences they can't explain. Hallucinations, or perceptions of deeper layers normally filtered out. Let me tell you about a different kind of experiment, one from October 2024. Researchers studying gamma waves, those fast, high-frequency oscillations associated with attention and awareness, discovered that conscious breathing strengthens the coupling between brain and heart. Not just that the brain observes the heart, but that they talk. When you breathe slowly and deliberately, gamma activity in your cortex begins to predict heart rate changes, and heart rate changes begin to predict shifts in brain activity. It's a feedback loop, a dialogue. The brain isn't just commanding the body is informing the brain. Top down and bottom up merging, and this is where it gets existentially significant. Because for most of human history, we've thought of consciousness as something that happens in the brain, a property of neurons, an emergent phenomenon of complexity. But what if that's backwards? What if the brain is more like a receiver and consciousness is the field? And breath is the way you tune into that field. When you change your breathing pattern, you're not generating a new state of mind. You're tuning into a different frequency, accessing information that was always there but filtered out by your default respiratory rhythm. This isn't just poetry, and it isn't just mysticism dressed as science. Because here's the twist. When researchers looked deeper, the data did something strange. It didn't disprove the idea that breath tunes consciousness. It accidentally drew the outline of how that could be possible. A 2025 review in Nature Reviews Neuroscience showed that respiratory rhythms don't only influence the parts of the brain that handle breathing. They influence everything. Memory networks, emotion circuits, decision-making hubs, even the visual cortex, the place where photons become experience. Breathing doesn't just calm you, it synchronizes you. In the hippocampus, slow breath rhythms act like a timing signal, organizing memories during sleep. In the olfactory system, they sharpen sensitivity beyond what sensory neurons should be capable of. In visual perception, your odds of noticing faint stimuli depend on when you inhale, as if breath adjusts the gain on your perceptual filters moment by moment. But here's the part the papers don't explain. If breath can globally synchronize oscillations across the brain, then it's not just changing what you perceive, it's changing how you perceive, which is the same as changing the interface itself. Your breath is not generating a new reality. It's curating the one you already inhabit, frame by frame, wave by wave, frequency by frequency. And if a system can be synchronized internally, there's no rule in physics that says it can't synchronize externally as well. Science describes the mechanism. It refuses to ask the implication. But the implication is obvious. If the brain truly behaves like a receiver and consciousness is the signal, then breath isn't the message. Breath is the tuning dial. Every inhale shifts the frequency. Every exhale collapses a slice of the world into awareness. You're not creating states, you're accessing them. States that were always present, but drowned out by your default rhythm. You've been tuning unconsciously your entire life. Imagine what happens when you do it with intention. Let me take you somewhere stranger. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, mechanistically. Because after all these studies, the gamma waves, the insula rewiring, the quantum hints in microtubules, a pattern starts emerging. Not a conclusion, but a contour. A silhouette of something we don't yet have a name for. And it begins here. Breath is not a bodily function. It's a synchronizing event. Every inhale, every exhale, not just moving gases in and out of flesh, but resetting oscillations across multiple systems, neural, cardiac, electromagnetic. A periodic pulse that seems designed not for survival, but for alignment. Alignment with what? With where? That's the part modern science keeps tiptoeing around. Because when you follow the data far enough, you end up here. Breath behaves like a carrier wave, a modulator, a timing signal. In physics, when you want two chaotic systems to communicate, you don't send information directly. You synchronize them to the same rhythm. Only then can they exchange anything meaningful. And that's what breath does to the brain. It imposes rhythm on noise. But here's the twist. The part you won't find in textbooks yet. Systems that synchronize don't just share timing. They share information. They share state. If quantum coherence in microtubules is real, and evidence is stacking that it might be, then breath isn't simply calming you, it's tuning you, bringing your internal oscillations closer to patterns that might extend beyond the skull. This is why intense breathwork sessions produce experiences people describe as not mine. Memories they never lived, symbols they never learned, presences they never believed in. Not hallucinations, not fantasies, signals leaking through, because the receiver was tuned. What if breath is the oldest interface we possess? Not between body and mind, but between mind and field? Between the private self and the shared architecture beneath it? Not a metaphorical connection to the world, a literal coupling mechanism. Think about this. If your breath can synchronize neural oscillations across the cortex, and those oscillations can influence quantum coherence inside microtubules, and microtubules can host entangled photons, then your breath might be doing something extraordinary, tuning your consciousness into structures that were never individual to begin with. Not memory stored in neurons, memory stored in the fabric of reality itself, accessible only when the internal noise collapses into coherence. Let's bring this back to something tangible, something you can test. Right now, wherever you are, try this. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Hold empty for 2. Do that 3 times. Notice what happens. Did time slow slightly? Did the edges of your awareness sharpen? Did your thoughts quiet just a little? That's the circuit. The pathway from cortex to brainstem, the dial turning. Now imagine doing that for an hour, for a day, for years. What would change? Maybe nothing, or maybe everything. Because here's the part modern science keeps rediscovering over and over again, as if stumbling through the dark towards something ancient. Every culture that ever studied consciousness began with breath, not meditation, not ritual. Breath. It's almost embarrassing how universal it is. The Egyptians called it Ka, the vital wind that animates the body. The Greeks called it pneuma, not air, but the divine spark carried through air. The Hebrews named it Ruach, breath as spirit, spirit as breath. In Sanskrit, prana meant not just oxygen, but the subtle current under reality. In China, qi wasn't energy. It was the movement that gives energy form. Different cultures, different languages, same idea. Breath as interface, breath as bridge, breath as the point where the human meets the more than human. And the strange thing is this: these civilizations didn't communicate. They didn't share texts. They weren't trading neuroimaging data or fMRI results. Yet somehow, across continents and centuries, they converged on the same conclusion. If you change your breath, you change your mind. If you change your mind, you change the world you experience. Not metaphorically, literally. Because the world you experience isn't out there. It's a construct, a controlled hallucination tuned by the rhythms of your nervous system. And breath, the one rhythm you can control, is the master dial. Modern science is only now catching up to what yogis, shamans, mystics, desert prophets, and temple architects have been hinting at for thousands of years. Breath is the lever that moves the inner universe, and the inner universe shapes the outer one. Consciousness isn't inside the skull. The skull is inside consciousness. Your brain isn't generating the world. It's sampling it, filtering it, rendering one version of a reality that is far richer, far denser, far more multidimensional than your default settings can handle. And breath, slow, deliberate, coherent breath, widens the aperture. Not infinitely, not dangerously, just enough. Enough to see that thoughts are not yours. They're passing weather, patterns in a field, ripples in something large enough to hold galaxies and quiet enough to whisper through a single inhale. Think about this. Every inhale increases order. Every exhale releases noise. Every cycle folds you a little deeper into alignment. Not with ideology, not with belief, but with structure. With the architecture beneath perception, with the grid behind experience. Breath isn't spiritual, it's structural. A metronome for the mind, a reset signal for the nervous system, a synchronization pulse for a consciousness that was never meant to be isolated. And this is why, across civilizations, across millennia, across languages, cultures, and mythologies, breath was always the first instruction and the final gateway. Because nothing else changes the channel so directly. Not prayer, not philosophy, not intention, not effort, only rhythm. Breath, it is access, access to clarity, access to coherence, access to the deeper architecture of the self and the larger architecture beyond it. Because once the tuning fork is struck, once resonance takes hold, once inner and outer begin to synchronize, the world you inhabit shifts, not dramatically, not theatrically, but unmistakably. Edges soften, patterns emerge, time obeys, and reality becomes something you interact with, not something that happens to you. This is the return, not back to normal, back to origin, back to the interface you were born with, back to the mechanism that was always there, back to the quiet truth on the other side of every inhale. You are not inside the world. The world is inside your breath.